Our next speaker, I know him since my childhood. It's very difficult to introduce him. But I was thinking in my mind of two introductions. One is a serious spiritual introduction, or the other is a masala Bollywood introduction. Which one would you like? Masala! Okay, you had your lunch. Maybe it was not enough masala. Are you sure? You got to cheer me on. With every dialogue that I do, you have to say wah, wah, wah and clap. Is that okay? Say masala if you want masala. Okay, here's the masala introduction, okay? So there's this little boy from a poor family. No, Wawa, not right now. I'll come to the dialogues, yeah. Ram Nagar, Hyderabad, was playing, Wawa not after every sentence, okay? They're playing cricket in the gullies of Ram Nagar. And then there's Parsi Gutta there, the Tower of Silence, right? And the ball goes in there. And this boy and this group of boys go there. And then the watchman just says, "Hey, ja idhar se, ja, ja." And then he replies, now you can say Wawa after this dialogue. In the words of his hero Amitabh Bachchan from Muqaddar Ka Sikandar, Aaj waqt ne mujhe mara hai to tu bhi maar le. Magar time aayega. ये पारसी गुट्टा क्या दुनिया में सबसे बड़ा पारसी कंपनी टाटा का कम्युनिकेशंस हेड बनूंगा और इधर ही नहीं सिर्फ इंडिया में नहीं दुनिया में न्यूयॉर्क में सबसे बड़ा शहर में मैं कम्युनिकेशंस हेड बनूंगा एंड ही डिड आज वॉचमैन तो मुझे भगा रहा है मगर मैं भागूंगा हर एक सिटी का मैराथन में मैं भागूंगा वाह वाह वाह. And then he went, he became the communications head. He fulfilled his own self-prophecy. And then he went there. And then one day, he was taking a friend around the city of New Jersey, and then his luggage was in his house, and his friend was getting anxious. His friend's name was Pramod, because he had to catch a flight. And at that point of time, this great communications head forgot the way to his own house and went circling in many places. And his wife Prafulla was asking, "Hubby, you don't know the way to our own house?" And he said, "Senorita, bade shehar mein chote baatein hote rehte." And then his family, just one last dialogue, and then his family, pastors, forgive me, this is pure Bollywood, okay? We'll come to Tollywood now. His family became absolutely talented. Sunil Robert scaled peaks after peaks, distinguished Toastmasters, 2 books, sat outside the White House without being evicted for his book cover. And then his wife Prafulla also became very famous, and his son Aman recited the whole book of John in, which TV was it? Aradhana TV, and he's getting nervous. Last dialogue. And people were complaining, how can so much talent be in one family? He said, "Hey! Bogaru na vontulo, heroism na intlo untundi." And now I call upon stage Sunil Robert. Give him a big hand, ladies and gentlemen.
After this, I might as well just say thank you and sit down. You know, all that I've been wanting to share, many of the speakers already said. And whatever little is left, I'll leave it and sit down so that the other speakers can complete it. 30 years ago, in the year 1988, exactly in the month of July, Jason, Alvin, Yugandhar, and I, 4 friends and I, were catching a train to Chennai, and we were leaving the city. As the train was leaving, I looked towards the family that came to say bye. There wasn't Deepika Padukone chasing, but the riveting image in my mind was my mother with tears streaming down her face, because it seemed like that her older son has just committed career suicide. Because born into a family where my dad had lost his job, and for 4 or 5 years we had struggled with poverty. Just after I finished my polytechnic, my mother was expecting me to get into a good job, and South Central Railways had offered me a job as a signal inspector, grade 2. My job would have been to just manage the junctions and signals and all that. But instead of taking up that lucrative job, I had gone to Chennai for a theological course. My mother looked at me and said, "What is happening with our family?" Fast forward 22 years, 2009, very close to this place, a bookstore by the name Odyssey Bookstop, a bookstore. My mother was sitting in the audience, exactly the same tears rolling down her face. This time the tears were not of sadness, but of joy, because her son, after a 22-year-old after career, had scripted a book called I Will Survive, which was endorsed by none other than India's biggest business name, Ratan Tata. So in that two stories involving my mom lies the entire story of how God called me, God equipped me, and God orchestrated incidents, which are the 3 points I want to leave with you this afternoon time. Considering it's post-lunch, it's called the graveyard session for speakers. I'd like you to be a little interactive. In fact, I wanted to divide my talk into 2 parts, where the first part was where I was lean and lanky and I had hair like Benny Prasad. And the second half was where all the hair had gone in and formed adipose around my stomach. But when speakers are introduced like Pramod, I need to actually tell you a little story about Pramod, just so you know one of the reasons how God used Pramod in my life. Just when we were about to settle down in the US, we got our green card, I was praying with the idea, Lord, do you want me to go back to India and serve you? And around that time, Pramod, like he shared in his introduction, came and visited with us, and he told us about his plans to go back to India. And then that I saw as a clear sign that if Pramod is going to Hyderabad, I cannot go back to the same city. And so God remarkably used Pramod to confirm to me that my job and my career and my calling continues to be in the West. So thank you, Pramod, for the role God played in your life. The first time I discovered what God called me to for a purpose in my life was very early. Now, there are 5 elements that constitute what is known as God's call, and it is applicable across the board for all of you. God doesn't call with a very clear appointment letter and say, I hereby appoint you to be this. Right from your early days, right from your childhood, right from your DNA, when God creates you, as the psalmist said in 139, he makes that personality for a purpose. And it is in discovering and uncovering that purpose we spend our lives. So whether it was reciting memory verses in my childhood or taking part in public speaking competitions and elocution competitions, I discovered that I had a passion for communications. Instead, where did I end up? In a polytechnic of all the places. And I had to study electronics and communications engineering. So here's another parenting tip if any of you are about to become parents or have children already. Don't put children in a course where their heart is not there. I struggled for years. PCB repair was not my cup of tea. It's a great career. I'd encourage anybody who has a heart for electronics, not for me. So as I struggled in the college days, and I fell into bad company, and I was in all sorts of student politics, one day I landed up in a police station called the Tangbund Police Station for some student politics related thing. And that cop called me and said, "Eduntaura nuvu?" He asked me. Then I said, "Sir, ikkada Parsigutta daggar untam." Gundagalu untarra akkada anta. What are you doing, a student like you right there? And therein was an insight into what people expected of people who were born in a certain area, living in a certain community, with a name like Robert, which Bollywood made it very popular. All the bad guys have the name Robert, with a cross dangling out of it. Hey, Robert, maal paunch gaya kya? So if that was the level of expectations expected of me, my life was literally going there. But praise be to the Lord, God had a transformation planned for me. When I was leaving for Chennai, I had just come to know the Lord, and the verse that triggered my conversion experience is found in the book of Daniel, 11, chapter 32 verse. Those who know their God shall be strong and do great things. In that verse alone are found these three elements. Those who know God is your calling, shall be strong is your integrity, and do great things is excellence. And I want to give you a little examples because we were very, very short on time, so I want to be very pithy and crisp in my sharing. God called me, and I said no to a secure government job, and I told my mom, listen, trust me. I've been a good son. I'll try to be a good son. You got to trust me. And reluctantly, she had no other choice, so she trusted me, and I started pursuing a career in Eureka Foods Limited. That was the only company that hired undergraduates. And from sales, I moved into technical sales because I'd studied electronics. And as I traveled the length and breadth of India as a salesman, my avenues were open. What others saw as a difficult time in my life, God was preparing me. I went to Reliance in Patala Ganga. I went to Durgapur Steel Plant in Calcutta. I went to Ballarpur Paper Mills in Yamunanagar, Haryana, selling, as a teenager, instruments worth lakhs and crores of rupees in those days of pre-liberalization era, which meant a lot of work, a lot of negotiation, contract negotiation, a lot of financial negotiation. A teenager getting exposed to a whole lot of skills. It was difficult, but God was preparing me for a much larger role as time unfolds. So God calls you. Working in Bombay, I set my heart out to acquire education because a polytechnic course would not take me anywhere. So I decided, how do I pursue education while working? And I said, the only way is just try and work it out. If you don't have a choice, Viktor Frankl, the famous Austrian psychologist, said, when you can no longer change the circumstances, you'll be forced to change yourself. He was a Holocaust survivor, so he knows a thing or two about survival. So while traveling in a Mumbai local, visualize a Mumbai local, crowded local, I'm carrying this instrumentation kit, which is worth a few lakhs, and there's a suitcase with all my brochures and stuff in my other hand, crouched between my feet, or if I get a seat, if you're lucky enough to get a seat, in that horrible travel conditions, I prepared for my MBA entrance. Because I couldn't go for an MBA coaching or a full-time degree or a pursuit of a degree. But when you take a small leap of faith, God amplifies that. And so I competed with 19,500 students for a seat in MBA, and I was able to get in. And subsequently, while full-time working, I also pursued journalism in Osmania University, and I always share this with you. If your heart is hungry, God will open doors. Friends came around to help me. When I was studying cost accountancy in my MBA, my friends would actually fill up all the numbers, and then they teach me the formula and say, now apply the formula and give me the answer. God sends allies to come and help you around. God calls you with a specific purpose, and that's how I know that God had called me. Long story short, when in the 2-year time at Osmania University, out of the 5 gold medals, I had won 4. And I missed the 5th one with 1 point. The point I'm making is when God calls you, if you're rooted in God's word, and if you know how to march to the beats of the drummer that is driving you, you will know his call very clearly. The second part is God not only calls, but he also equips. So when I realized that electronics was not meant for me, sales is not meant for me, my heart is in communications, I had to get into communications. As soon as I got these 2 degrees, advertising opened up for me. And I didn't go to a fancy school like Hyderabad Public School, like our MC did. I was aspiring, dreams in my eyes. Those aspirations came true only when I put my heart and mind into the pursuit of my dreams. Do you know how I studied and acquired a better vocabulary? In my sales office, people would have discarded visiting cards, business cards. You know them, right? Those small. Behind them, I would make index cards of every word and understand its meaning, understand the opposites, antonyms, pursue it. Nobody could stop me because the passion and the pursuit of that, the acquisition of those skills, I knew someday was going to come. Although I was having a day job in sales and technical sales, I would support many ministries in just making their communication material, their brochures and stuff like that, because my heart was, how do I equip myself to serve the greater purposes of God? Because the words that transform me, those who know God shall be strong and do great things, just kept coming at me and haunting me. Like the hound of heaven, there's a famous book called The Hound of Heaven. He calls you and he hounds you till his purposes for our life is accomplished. So God equips. God calls, God equips. And finally, I want to just move to the third part, where is God orchestrates events in your life. Every time, after those acquisition of those degrees, I started writing to various newspapers. If you're a freelancer, writing for newspapers is one of the toughest assignments because they prefer usually their staffers and in-house reporters and journalists, sub-editors to get the bylines. I started with small newspapers like Deccan Chronicle, Economist. Then I went national. Then my aspirations started growing. God honored that hunger and passion, and in my final pinnacle of success, I was able to write for Encyclopedia Britannica. When you feel that God called you, when you feel that God equipped you, you'll just go and express yourself. You will say, every action that I do, it's no longer about me. It's about God. So once you commit career suicide, your career will take off. Believe me, when it's no longer about you and your appraisals and your promotions and your LinkedIn profiles, and it's no longer about you and say, I want to serve God's purpose in my corporate world, then everything opens up. It's a different game altogether. So once I started expressing myself in my work and became passionate about what God wants me to do, because my life's mission was built on this verse. Those who know God shall be strong and do great things. And great things that you go competing head to head with secular competitors. You know, when you're in the corporate world, they use the word value add. Yes or no? They use the term value add, right? Christians don't value add. They value amp. You amplify the value that you bring to the table. Go beyond the call of duty so many times that you have no idea what call of duty means. Because why? Because when you do that, you're fulfilling what a Christian work ethic looks like. A couple of stories I want to bring in. You know, when it's no longer about you and you believe in the mission and the vision of the company and the leadership, you will start delivering that value amp. I, as a corporate communicator, have to sit in meetings with journalists and senior leaders, right? So one day in Oberoi, a senior leader was sitting with us, one of the best journalists in the country known for business reporting. And one of the techniques that journalists use, not some of our journalists who are sitting here, but they use is they drink with the person that they are interviewing. And as they are interviewing, their guard becomes lower and lower. And you know, once leaders start getting intoxicated, they end up saying all sorts of things. So I was sitting on the other side of this senior leader, and he started telling some things that he should not have told a journalist ever. So I just gently reached out my legs under the table and tried to tap my senior boss. He was like the big shot in the organization. He didn't pay attention. He was so excited about the story, he was going full throttle. Then when I realized that I'm now getting into troubled waters, I gave him a solid FIFA World Cup type of a kick. And then he kind of got it. I must have been, and then to his credit, he just recovered and he said, I need to go to the bathroom, and he recovered his composure and came back and changed the topic. But I must have been the only one in the company who ever gave a kick to the CEO of the company and still had a manager of the job. Why? Because, you know, in those hard moments, it doesn't matter who your CEO or the senior leader is, your boss is, the designation, you're not intimidated. You don't care because you believe so much in the passion and the conviction of the mission you believe that God placed you for a season. The previous 4 jobs that I've had, my first job I went to Bangalore to work with Acer. Prior to that, actually, the interesting story, there was a guy who hired me for a company here, And he asked me, when can you come? This was on 28th September 1998. The day I vividly remember because that was my sister's birthday, my sister's marriage day. He said, what time can you come for an interview? I said, 29th September, because 28th is my sister's wedding. He said, can you come after the wedding is over? I said, the wedding gets over at 3. He said, come at 4. He wouldn't let go. I said, I can come next day. So after the wedding, with all that Gandham and all that, I actually went for an interview and got the job. And the next job that I had, there was a guy who wanted to hire me, and I said, I can only come to Bangalore on such and such a time. He said, I can't wait that long. He came to Hyderabad, to Ramada near the Begumpet airport, interviewed me there, and got me a job. The following job, the guy literally chased me 3 times. So when you are equipped by God, when you're called by God, favor chases you down and hunts you down. The current boss that I worked for waited for 2 months before I took in the acceptance letter because I wasn't sure I should take this job. If God is orchestrating circumstances, He knows what is the perfect time to bring you in and what is the perfect time to get you out. Why this performance anxiety? If you're strong in your faith, those who know their God shall be strong, purpose shall be strong. And then they'll do great stuff, excellence. The second, and I'll just conclude with a couple of short stories. This has a disappointing tinge to it. There's a big channel in UK. It starts with a B and ends with a C. Out of 160 people, they whittled down the 2 things for the final 2. 2 days before the decision was to be known, the pastor in our church, a man by name Chris Lemming, said, do you know God speaks to His children clearly? And if you want, just pause for a moment and pray. So I prayed and said, God, what do you think happens about this channel that starts with a B and ends with C? And God said, no. I was gutted because from 160 people who applied, I had come down to the final 2, and He said no. Cut a long story short, they hired somebody else because they had apparently more experience, and I couldn't get it. It took weeks for me to recover from that blow. I was actually going to teach in Haggai for a seminar, and I was passing through New York. I ran into our CEO at our New York office. I was very disappointed, and he said, so what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm kind of going through a disappointment because you guys are not using me well enough. Oh, if that's your feeling, why don't you move to the United States? That time I was working in London. He moved me to the States. Within 1 year, see how God turns your disappointments into appointments. Within 1 year, the best corporate communications professional in the world, Stevie Award, was given to the first Indian, that's me. First ever Indian. But that was just the beginning. The book set me up to write the book. The award set me up to write the book, I Will Survive. And one day I got an email from a kid, young lad, from a boy by name Sheikh in Srinagar, Kashmir. He said, sir, I've read your book. I was about to commit suicide. Your book literally saved my life. What are the chances that a young lad who was a loser in Hyderabad connects with a young man in Srinagar? If that is not purpose of God, I don't know what is. God calls us with a specific purpose. Small, big, medium, we have influence in the company. So forget designations, forget appraisals, forget promotions. If you're fulfilling God's plan for your life, you're in great shape. So not only is it impact all the time, yesterday's manna will not power today's mission. Every morning, His mercies are new every morning, so should our energies be. When you walk into the corporate world, they're hurting. In the last 4 or 5 years, I've trained about 10,000 people in the USA alone on various leadership topics, all for free. It's not part of my KRAs. My KRAs are in marketing. I train because I'm passionate about changing people's lives through my story. A couple of quick stories. How do you reach a person when they have lots of money, lots of bank balance, lots of assets, and their bliss. We can say Jesus is the answer, but they'll say, I don't have a question. Our ability to break through in the corporate world is a function of what value you add, what value you amplify in touching your colleagues' lives. And so I struggled, say, how can I serve God in this affluent community of Indians there, in this company where I'm always meeting these super successful young people. And then God opened this door and saying, through my book, through my leadership skills, through the coaching that I offer, inspiring and impacting people. 3-4 weeks ago, I gave a TED Talk in Wilmington, Delaware. The moment I posted it on Facebook, a high-profile journalist quickly pinged me and said, it was serendipitous that you sent me this. And I called her and said, why do you say that? She said, when your message came on my phone, I was standing on top of our apartment complex, unsure if I should continue with my life, because our business had just suffered, her husband's business had suffered a 2 crore worth loss. And then your message comes of fighting, of powering forward with hope, and your message literally gave me hope. So let me conclude by asking, those who know their God shall be strong and do great things. You and I can be seen as nobody in the eyes of the world, but when God sees you, he sees you a mighty instrument to impact the corporate world. May the Lord bless these words.